Welcome back, friends. This is Black Magic Sorcerer here with another video, and today we're just going to do a quick overview about the card the Magician. His number is 1, his planet is Mercury, air and or earth are the elements. So the energetic signature that I see whenever I look at the Magician is really, it pops out as self-explanatory to me, but it may seem kind of strange to someone who maybe just saw this piece of art for the first time. So I've drawn my own little magician over here beside him, just kind of in inspiration of. And really, I think the Magician's energy, the first thing that it casts off is opportunity and eternity. You can see the eternity symbol above his head. Each one of the weapons on the table represents the elements. He is, of course, holding the air, holding the wand, which represents air. He has flowers and lilies growing around him. That represents red represents power. So white being innocent and purity. So the combination of those two is that really the Magician is a very positive card to get in a reading, because it's saying that there's magical forces afoot that are going to create opportunities, or someone in your life, perhaps a character who fits his description. It all depends on where you put the card in the spread. So, you know, obviously if you have a 10 card spread, each one of those 10 places has a different meaning, and then its relation to each card may lead you to different answers. But in regards to just understanding what the Magician is by itself, it really just represents magic, and to me it represents alchemy and the external and internal change that can be brought about by the Magician by simply using the forces of nature. So it's about being balanced and using those elemental forces to create those miracles in the external world. He has one hand in the air and the other hand pointing to the ground. And of course we all know the phrase "as above, so below," which really it just means that everything in every dimension has something else that's equal to it in its own right. So if this dimension is one dimension, then the dimension beside it is equivalent to and a reflection or mirror of it. And that's why you will think about certain things that you want to happen, and then they manifest here. It's the angelic forces do the work up there for us. We don't know how it happens. We ask for these miracles, and somehow things transpire here and manifest because we are the Magician. A lot of people in a 10 card spread will use the Magician as the person, as the querent, or the question asker. I prefer not to do that. I don't really feel like you need to pull a card to represent the person. If you do, it's a good idea, but the way I would do that, if I was going to represent the person asking the question in the deck, I would look for a character that I think fits or represents that person. So excuse me for clearing my throat every 5 seconds. So anyway, that's basically the gist of it. And when you see him if you're like me, I read upright. I don't see the point of reading him up and down. So I use my intuition and I decide whether or not that card is positive or negative, depending on the relation to the other cards in the 10 card spread. Or if it's a 3 card spread, where is he at? What's the question? Everything is relative, but you always have to remember when you see this guy, it's a bit like in Lord of the Rings when in Volume 2 in the movie, when Gandalf suddenly comes down the hill and everyone turns and looks, and boom, there's this light, and here comes the Magician down the hill to save the day. That's kind of what the Magician feels like to me when I see him in a spread. It's like kind of a very heroic character in a lot of ways, because he's going to bring positive change to this situation. And it could represent you if you are into magic, but it also just represents the forces of nature, the elements of creation more than nature. But it's basically saying that if you wield those elements properly and know how to use them, you will be not only the magician but have eternal and infinite power by wielding the forces of the elements. So more about the elements later, but I think it's really important to point out the beauty and simplicity of the Rider-Waite deck. The images are almost silly, but I have grown to love them and have really such a respect for the deck. I finally did break down and buy these bigger cards. I don't use them in readings, but it's great to use a card like this for explaining the deck. So anyway, that's what Rider-Waite did for their magician. So my magician is a little more simplistic. He's more of a dark, sinister looking character, kind of like Joker-like expression. He has a bag of weapons on the back. I don't know why I gave him kind of a Dungeons and Dragons type weapon holder. He has his hands placed upon the altar. He has a knife in one hand, the dagger, the red chalice represents the chalice filled with blood. There is a what do you call it, hourglass next to the cup, representing time and eternity. It's one thing that you could put on your altar that a lot of people don't think about, is something that represents time, or more importantly represents eternity. So for me, that's the pentacle, and the pentacle is the red symbol, the tetragrammaton. So anyway, everything is relevant when it comes to pictures, and if this were my tarot card for my magician, I would put a little more detail into it, more representing the elements, something that represents the Mercury current, and maybe something that shows a little more detail just in the symbols somehow. But anyway, it's amazing what you can do with your imaginations and markers, and to kind of just interpret something, I think, is great. So I'm doing this exercise together with you guys. I encourage you to get blank paper. This is just some scrap paper that I found at work that someone didn't want, and I was like, this is great because I can always use that to scribble on and destroy that before you go out and buy fancy paper to paint on or whatever. So if you like my art and you think it's inspiring, I would be willing to send originals like this out, but I'm going to save them and use them in magic too, probably. So let me know. I can do custom artwork for you. It's really fun to do curse artwork, where basically you give me a photo of your enemy and I draw him in or her into that scenario that you want to see them in. It's comical, fun, and dangerous. So if you're interested, let me know. Anyway, dark blessings, my friends. That is the magician, and see you for the next card.